How did humans survive the Ice Age nights? A symphony of adaptation. Introduction. The unseen struggle. The Ice Age. It's a term that conjures images of vast frozen landscapes, roaming mammoths, and a relentless numbing cold. For the humans of this period, survival was a daily, and especially a nightly, struggle against the elements. The question, how did humans sleep in the Ice Age without freezing to death, is not a simple query about a single solution. It is an entry point into a profound story of human ingenuity, resilience, and a complex system of intertwined adaptations, behavioral, technological, and physiological, that allowed our ancestors to not only endure, but to thrive in the most hostile of environments. Their nightly rest was not a passive act of slumber, but a carefully orchestrated ritual of survival, a testament to their deep understanding of the world and their place within it. To fully grasp their nightly reality, we must first understand the complete interconnected web of their existence, from the materials they used to the very workings of their bodies. 1. The architectural bulwark. Shelters of stone, bone, and earth. While a single cold cave may be the most common pop culture image of an Ice Age home, the reality was far more sophisticated and varied. Our ancestors were master architects, using available materials to create structures that were a radical departure from simple, natural shelters. Caves and rock shelters. The initial blueprint. Caves and rock overhangs were certainly used, providing immediate protection from wind, rain, and snow. However, they were rarely used in their raw state. Inside a cave, moisture from breathing and melting snow could lead to a frigid, damp environment. To combat this, Paleolithic occupants would construct elaborate internal structures. Post holes found in cave floors, like those at Grotte du Lazaret in France, indicate that they built smaller, enclosed huts inside the caves. These inner sanctums, likely made of wood and hides, created a secondary layer of insulation, trapping the heat generated from a central hearth and providing a dry, protected sleeping area. The cave itself became a natural windbreak and a stable foundation, while the human-made structure provided a more habitable microclimate within. The strategic choice of a cave was itself a complex decision. Humans often selected locations near rivers or lakes, providing access to water and food sources, but also near hilltops for defensive positions. The use of the cave's deepest recesses as middens for refuse is a sign of their sophisticated waste management and an attempt to keep living spaces clean. This level of planning demonstrates a foresight that goes far beyond simple animal-like habitation. The cave was not a mere shelter, it was a home, a ritual space, and a hub of communal life, as evidenced by the shift in the Upper Paleolithic from dwelling to ritualistic use of caves, as shown by the cave paintings. The mammoth bone houses of the steppe. Perhaps the most iconic example of Ice Age ingenuity is the Mammoth Bone House. Found primarily in Ukraine and Russia, these were not simple structures, but monumental feats of engineering. The construction process was a testament to cooperative effort and a deep understanding of physics. Semi-subterranean foundation. The first step was to dig a circular or oval pit, often several feet deep. This was a critical step, as the earth below the frost line maintains a relatively stable, warmer temperature. The pit's walls provided natural insulation and a wind-protected base. The skeletal framework. The massive bones of woolly mammoths, skulls, femurs, and particularly the curved tusks were used to form the structural framework. Skulls were often placed at the base, forming a stable wall, while tusks were interlocked to create a dome-like roof structure. This created a remarkably strong and resilient frame. At sites like Mezerichij, archaeologists have uncovered clusters of these huts, suggesting an organized village with a sophisticated social structure. The sheer effort required to gather, transport, and assemble these bones speaks to a high degree of cooperation and planning within these communities. Layered insulation. The framework was then covered with a complex layering of materials. First, large animal hides, often from bison or reindeer, would be stretched over the bone frame, tied down with sinew or hide strips. On top of this, a thick layer of turf, soil, and even snow would be piled. This layering was a highly effective system of insulation. The hides created an inner chamber, while the heavy earth and snow acted as a thermal mass, trapping the heat from within and shielding the interior from the external cold. The weight of the earth also provided stability, a crucial feature in a world of high winds. Other structures. Adaptation to locality. While mammoth bone huts are famous, other shelters were equally ingenious. In areas with dense forests, huts were built from wood, mud, and leaves, a forerunner to modern earth-sheltered homes. In northern Europe, temporary dwellings known as shielings were made from branches and turf, providing a form of mobile insulation for groups that followed migratory herds. The portability of these structures, often like a modern tent or yurt, highlights the flexibility of Ice Age humans. They could adapt their architectural solutions to the resources at hand and the demands of their nomadic lifestyle. The physics of the dwelling. The design of these shelters was an intuitive application of physical principles. The dome shape minimized the surface area exposed to the elements, reducing heat loss. The semi-subterranean design utilized the thermal inertia of the earth, providing a constant temperature buffer. The layers of hides, turf, and snow created an effective barrier against convection, heat loss due to air movement, and conduction, heat loss through direct contact with cold surfaces. A small entrance, often with a windbreak, further minimized the influx of cold air. The heart of the home. The hearth. Within these shelters, the hearth was the central axis of life. More than just a fire, it was a carefully managed piece of technology. Many hearths were constructed as pits, lined with stones that would absorb the heat and radiate it slowly throughout the night, acting as a primitive form of underfloor heating. The fuel was not just wood, it was also the dried bones and dung of animals, a high-density, long-burning fuel source that was often more readily available than wood in the treeless steppes. The consistent glow and warmth of the hearth made the difference between a restless night and a restorative sleep. The placement of the hearth was strategic. In larger shelters, multiple hearths might be used to heat different areas. The hearth's constant heat would also dry out the interior of the shelter, preventing the buildup of dampness and mold, which would have made the space uninhabitable. The hearth was a furnace, a kitchen, and a gathering point all in one, a glowing beacon of life in the darkness. 2. The tailored armor. The art and science of Ice Age clothing and bedding. The second layer of protection, crucial for both day and night, was clothing. The Paleolithic era saw the birth of sophisticated garment making, far beyond the simple hide draping often imagined. The key innovation was the eyed bone needle. The seemingly small tool, crafted from bone, antler, or ivory, was as revolutionary as the wheel. It allowed for the piercing of small, precise holes through which fine sinew or plant fibers could be threaded. This meant that hides and furs could be stitched together to create tailored, form-fitting, and multi-layered garments. A wardrobe for the ages. For the Ice Age humans crafted a full suite of cold weather apparel. Parkas and trousers. Multiple layers of animal pelts would be sewn together to create a full body suit. The inner layers, with the fur facing inward, trapped a layer of warm air against the skin, while the outer layers, with the fur facing outward, provided protection from wind and moisture. The use of different animals, reindeer, wolf, Arctic fox, would provide different levels of insulation and flexibility. Reindeer hide, for example, is incredibly dense and insulating, making it ideal for outer layers. Mittens and hoods. Extremities are where heat loss is most rapid. Mittens, crafted from thick furs, and hoods, often an integral part of the parka, were essential for preserving manual dexterity and protecting the head, which is a significant source of heat loss. In the coldest regions, a double hood, an inner one of soft fur and an outer one of thicker, wind-resistant hide, would have been necessary. Footwear. Boots were also multi-layered, an inner layer of soft hide, perhaps from a smaller animal, would be lined with moss or grass for insulation. The outer layer, made from a thicker, more durable hide, was often waterproofed with animal fat. The fit was crucial. A loose boot would allow cold air in, while a tight one would restrict blood flow. The craft of making clothes. In the process of creating these garments was labor-intensive and required specialized knowledge. Hides had to be scraped clean of flesh and fat using stone tools. They were then tanned, often by rubbing them with animal brain matter and fats to make them soft and pliable. The tanning process was a vital step in transforming a rigid hide into a flexible material suitable for tailoring. The fine bone needles and awls found at archaeological sites demonstrate a high level of craftsmanship, indicating that tailoring was a skill passed down through generations. Beyond function, the role of adornment and the creation of tailored clothing also paved the way for social and cultural expression. Archaeological finds show that eyed needles were used not only for stitching garments, but also for attaching decorative elements like beads, shells, and animal teeth. This transformed clothing from a simple survival tool into a form of personal identity and social status, marking a significant step in the evolution of human culture. The very act of tailoring itself became a skill of great value, showcasing a person's mastery over their environment. The communal bed, a collective embrace. Inside the shelter, clothing was supplemented by carefully prepared bedding. The floor was always a threat due to its ability to wick away body heat. To counter this, a thick base layer of dry leaves, moss, or grass would be laid down. On top of this, large animal hides, with the fur facing inward, would be arranged to create a communal sleeping mat. The act of communal sleeping was arguably the single most important behavioral adaptation for surviving the night. Hunter-gatherer communities were small, and they slept in close proximity, huddling together for warmth. A pile of a dozen or more bodies, wrapped in furs, creates a powerful collective heat source. This group thermoregulation was far more effective than individual attempts to stay warm. The warmth of a single person's body would dissipate quickly, but the combined heat of a group was enough to create a warm microclimate that would last through the night. This huddling was not just about physical warmth, it also fostered social cohesion, reinforced family bonds, and provided a sense of safety and security in a world full of dangers. The communal bed was a central feature of Ice Age life, a physical and emotional anchor in a hostile world. It was a space where the old and the young, the strong and the sick, were all cared for. It was the hub of storytelling, of quiet conversation, and of the shared human experience. 3. The inner engine. Diet, metabolism, and physiological adaptation. Surviving the cold was as much about what was inside the body as what was on it. The Paleolithic diet particularly in cold climates, was a marvel of caloric efficiency. The high-fat, high-protein diet. While the modern paleo diet is a wellness trend, the actual diet of Ice Age humans was a matter of survival. It was a high-protein, high-fat diet derived from hunting large mammals like mammoths, bison, and woolly rhinos. These animals were not just a source of lean meat. Their fat and organs were a crucial source of calories and energy. In a cold environment, a high caloric intake is essential for maintaining body temperature. Fat, in particular, is the most energy-dense macronutrient, providing a powerful fuel for the body's internal furnace. The process of thermogenesis, or heat production, is directly tied to metabolism. A high-protein diet also requires more energy to digest, generating additional heat in a process known as the thermic effect of food. For populations in colder climates, studies of modern hunter-gatherer diets show that animal products can account for over 90% of caloric intake. The Ice Age diet would have been a similar story. The emphasis was on a diet that provided a constant, high-energy burn. They would have consumed every part of an animal, the marrow from bones, the brain, the organs, and the fat, all of which are incredibly rich in calories. The role of fire in nutrition. The mastery of fire also played a crucial role in nutrition. Cooking meat and plant foods made them easier to digest, allowing the body to extract more nutrients and calories. This enhanced efficiency meant that less food was wasted and more energy was available to fuel the body's fight against the cold. Cooking also killed harmful bacteria and parasites, reducing the risk of illness. The ability to cook also meant that a wider variety of plants, such as tubers, could be consumed, as cooking would break down their tough cellular walls and make them edible. The combination of a high-calorie diet and the ability to cook meant that Ice Age humans had a powerful metabolic advantage over other hominids. The body's biological defenses. Over hundreds of thousands of years, the human body also evolved subtle but significant physiological adaptations to the cold. Peripheral vasoconstriction. This is a key thermoregulatory response. When exposed to cold, the body constricts blood vessels in the extremities, hands, feet, nose, to reduce blood flow. This prevents warm blood from reaching the skin's surface and losing heat to the air. It keeps the core organs, the brain, heart, and lungs at a stable, life-sustaining temperature. While it makes the fingers and toes feel frigid, it is a crucial survival mechanism. Brown adipose tissue, BAT, often called brown fat. BAT is a specialized tissue that generates heat through the process of non-shivering thermogenesis. While it's most common in infants, research suggests that adults can also activate it. A high-fat, high-protein diet would have provided the necessary fuel to maintain this internal furnace. Cold acclimatization. Repeated exposure to cold over a lifetime leads to acclimatization. This means the body's metabolic rate increases, and it becomes more efficient at heat production. People who have acclimatized to cold can maintain a higher core temperature with less shivering and discomfort than those who are unaccustomed to the cold. 4. The Fire Keepers, a beacon of life. In Brixeken art fire keepers. Beacon of life, a beacon of life, a beacon art fire. Fire was more than just a source of heat and light. It was a fundamental pillar of Ice Age society. The ability to create and control fire was a defining characteristic of human survival. Hearth construction and fuel management. Consokrawid kamerts, pleiten ud med extraction, en wider simpel alzeramin, thurjubesump the kalthak the physic sturing, till all of fern heidemel, the way of beware of a warrior animal, to ply foliates. As noted, Hearths were not just random piles of burning wood. They were carefully designed structures. Some were lined with stone to retain and radiate heat, a form of thermal mass. Others were dug into the ground to protect the flame from wind and to better contain the embers. The selection of fuel was a science in itself. In forested areas, wood was the primary fuel, but in the open, treeless steppes, where much of Ice Age humanity lived, fuel was a precious resource. They would have used dried animal dung, which burns hot and long, and the bones of the animals they hunted, particularly the oily bones of mammoths, which provided a dense, slow-burning fuel source. This resourcefulness ensured that the fire, the key to their survival, would not go out. The art of fire starting. Starting a fire without matches or a lighter is a difficult task, and Ice Age humans were masters of this skill. They would have used a fire plow, a fire saw, or a hand drill, all of which use friction to create an ember. The most common method would have been the percussion method, where a piece of iron pyrites or marcasite was struck against flint to create a spark. The spark would then be caught on a piece of dried tinder, such as dried moss, fungus, or finely shredded plant material, and then carefully fanned into a flame. This knowledge, passed down through generations, was a critical part of their cultural heritage and a cornerstone of their survival. The social and psychological role of fire. The fire was the social nucleus of the group. It provided a sense of safety and security in a world full of dangers. Predators, with the exception of the most determined, would have been hesitant to approach the light and noise of a fire. The fire also created a social space where stories were told, tools were crafted, and social bonds were strengthened. The flickering light in the darkness was a symbol of their collective will to survive. It was a beacon that gave them a sense of control and purpose in a world that was otherwise wild and unpredictable. 5. The rhythms of the night. The biphasic sleep cycle. The final piece of the puzzle is understanding the very nature of their sleep. Modern humans are accustomed to a monophasic sleep pattern, a single continuous block of sleep. For our ancestors, this was the exception, not the rule. The absence of artificial light meant that their sleep was governed by the natural rhythms of sunset and sunrise. The most common pattern was biphasic, or segmented sleep, consisting of 2 distinct periods. The first sleep. This began a few hours after sunset, as the group settled down for the night. This initial period of sleep lasted for a few hours, providing essential rest after a long day of hunting or foraging. The nocturnal wakefulness. Around midnight, or during the coldest part of the night, the group would naturally awaken for an hour or two. This was not a time of frustration or insomnia. It was a time for quiet communal activity. The fire, which had been burning low, would be stoked back to life. It was a time for conversation, storytelling, and social bonding, all activities that would not have been possible during the day's rigorous work. It was also a critical period of vigilance, as a watchful member of the group could tend to the fire and listen for the sounds of predators. The second sleep. After this period of communal wakefulness, the group would settle back down for a second sleep that lasted until dawn. This sleep pattern was not a mere curiosity. It was a deeply practical and evolutionarily sound strategy. It allowed for a continuous night watch, ensuring the safety of the group. It also optimized energy use, allowing them to tend to the fire and huddle for warmth during the coldest hours of the night. This natural cycle also ensured that when the sun rose, the entire group was well rested and ready to face the day's challenges. The existence of this pattern is supported by the work of historian A. Roger Eckertz, who has documented its prevalence in pre-industrial societies. suggesting it is a natural human sleep rhythm. The quiet, introspective period of wakefulness may have also been important for cognitive function and stress regulation. 6. The social and psychological dimension, cooperation and resilience. Survival in the Ice Age was not a solo endeavor. It was a collective project that required immense cooperation, communication, and social cohesion. Hyper-cooperation and egalitarianism. Hunter-gatherer societies were typically egalitarian, with little social hierarchy. This structure was a necessity. In a world of extreme risk, every member of the group was vital to survival. The burden of hunting, foraging, and building was shared, as was the responsibility of keeping the fire going and watching for threats. This hyper-cooperative model, where resources and tasks were shared widely, was a powerful mechanism for survival. The group was stronger than the individual, and the collective was a buffer against the harshness of the environment. The low relatedness of individuals in hunter-gatherer bands, as documented by anthropologists, suggests that these groups were not just extended families, but coalitions of people who chose to live together for mutual benefit and survival. Storytelling and the transmission of knowledge. The long dark nights provided a canvas for the transmission of knowledge. The firelight was the stage for storytelling, where myths, history, and crucial survival skills were passed from one generation to the next. Stories about successful hunts, the dangers of certain animals, or the locations of vital resources were not just entertainment, they were a form of education. The psychological comfort of a shared story, a shared mythos, would have provided a powerful sense of unity and purpose in the face of an indifferent world. It was in the dark, firelit hours that humanity truly became human. Emotional resilience. Living in a world of constant threat and extreme hardship would have required an extraordinary level of emotional resilience. The psychological toll of the cold, the fear of starvation, and the constant threat from predators and rivals would have been immense. The social bonds forged through communal living and the shared experiences of hunting and survival were a critical component of their mental fortitude. The very act of huddling together for warmth was a physical expression of their shared struggle and their collective will to persevere. The close physical contact and intimacy of communal life provided a psychological safety net, a buffer against the pervasive anxieties of their environment. Conclusion: a masterclass in survival. The survival of Ice Age humans through the long, frigid nights was not due to a single trick, but to a holistic strategy. It was a masterclass in adaptation, a seamless blend of technology, biology, and social organization. Their shelters were engineering marvels, designed with an intuitive understanding of physics and insulation. Their clothing was a form of high-tech protection, crafted with a skill that rivaled modern artisans. Their diet was a deliberate metabolic strategy, providing the fuel for a powerful internal furnace. The very rhythm of their sleep was a natural response to their environment, yet it was transformed into a time of social connection and vigilance. Every piece of their existence, from the construction of a hearth to the very metabolism of their bodies, was finely tuned to the challenge of their environment. They were not just enduring the Ice Age, they were mastering it, using their intellect, their social bonds, and their inherent biological resilience to carve out a place for humanity in a world of ice and snow. The story of how they slept without freezing to death is a beautiful and complex tale of a species that was born to overcome